The red truth can cut the weak reasoning of the human side apart over and over. In the past, I feared its ruthlessness. However, I also learned quickly that it could be used as a basis for a counterattack.
赤き真実はベアとの気持ち今は痛いくらいにわかる
It can kill with ease, but it's not something to be used unnecessarily. Using it carelessly will end up cornering the witch side instead.
どうします？
いや、わかった。それ以外の全員がいとこ部屋にいることを認める。
Mm-hmm. 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 So essentially guaranteeing there's no one outside of the 6 victims in the mansion, the 6 people in the room, the 5 people in the room next door, and the 6 people in the cousin room. There's no one outside of that. And ensuring that there's 6 people in the mansion, 11 people there, and that's exactly how it's divided up. No one is unaccounted for. Everyone who is not those 6 or those 5 are all in that room. I don't know how she's going to turn that around on him, but we'll see.
ありがとうございます。実に美しい。この状況で魔女からの手紙が現れたりなんかしたら、一体誰を疑えばいいのやら。
She said she was in trouble, but her face didn't look troubled at all. On the contrary, she looked as though she had just succeeded in placing a huge opening move. In a witch's game, even a single mistake can be fatal. In both chess and shogi, you can get a piece back once you've moved it. That last exchange had left a bad aftertaste, as though flesh had been torn and bones broken.
所在確認はこれで十分。ゲームを進めて。
そうします。ドラノール。はい、エリカ卿。それでは早速始め。慈悲深いゲームマスター様がくださった権利を。はい、ここガートルード。3部屋許された権利のうちの2部屋分を行使します。
Yep.
金慶、慎んで了解するものなりや。いとこ部屋と隣部屋をこれで犠牲者以外の全員。これ以降何が起こっても封印の中の人間たちは問題となりません。扉、窓の封印、いとこ部屋、隣部屋の両部屋の密封は保証されました。
Just an instant, a red longsword had returned to Delanor's hand. She'd been given permission to draw it, thanks to the red truth that she'd finally gained. When the fight concerned these 2 sealed rooms from now on, Delanor would be able to use that merciless blade, the red key. Its overwhelming power could slice even the game master in half. For a while, Erika and Delanor just grinned at each other, entranced by the ruthless red light that was burned into their eyes.
慎んでお尋ね立てまつる。何か。人間側プレイヤーは魔女の出題を人間の仕業で読み解くのが戦い。あなたに相違なし。なればなぜにエリカ卿と犯行の余地ある人間を自ら減らすように戦うなりや。
Cornelia's question was a very simple one. These 2 had made this move boldly, making it sound like it was a powerful one, almost as though it would greatly damage the witch. However, if you thought about it, Erika was just strangling her own neck.
これよりどのような事件が起こる、むしろ所在を確定させない人間が多い方が人間に有利。今はまだ。今日も上司主席も。
Cornelia looked like she wasn't satisfied. In the previous game, when trying to help Kinzo escape from his study, Badler desperately tried to break free from that closed room using various methods. As a result, Kinzo had escaped into the darkness of the night, and it had later been possible to treat him like an elusive phantom. In other words, closed rooms are advantageous to witches and disadvantageous to humans. Witches proposed closed rooms and humans destroyed and denied them. That should have been the standard tactic of this game. And yet Erika had created closed rooms herself, sealing a full 11 humans inside them. In other words, this was the same as abandoning the right to use those 11 people and explaining all of the later tricks. In the past, Badler had confirmed the location of certain people, but that had been to check whether certain pieces existed with which he could break closed rooms, a completely different situation. Why had Erika taken these 11 people, who were also her pieces, and sealed them inside a closed room? Cornelia hadn't experienced enough fights to understand this move, which looked as though they were trapping themselves.
不気味な一手です。一体エリカは何を企んでいるのでしょう。
攻撃とは限らねえさ。チェスも将棋もそう、キングの守りを固めておくのだって立派。
つまりこの2部屋の封印は、
そう考えるのがおかげで生存者たちに第2の番が実行しにくくなったってわけだ。
ああ、なるほ
But
ど。
not impossible.
魔女側は謎を多く提示した方が有利。
そうだ。何しろ一つでも謎が通れば魔女の勝ちなんだからな。多くの密室を提示した方が有利に戦える。
The riddles that the witch side sets up are equivalent to attacks, and the human side must perfectly intercept all of those. It's almost like a penalty shootout where letting a single point slip by means defeat. So the witch side wants to increase its number of attacks. The human side wants to lower the number of attacks. When Badler had fought on the human side, he hadn't thought of the survivors holding up in a room as being particularly useful. However, from the witch's side's perspective, the strategy was simple but effective. What made Beato incredible was how she'd bluffed and sneered at this tactic as though it was completely useless. On the inside, she must have been so worried over how to break down all these barricades in each game. Right now, I'm sure of that.
なるほど。事件が発生できないように守りを固めるのも人間側の戦い方なんですね。
しかしそれは平凡な一手だ。あの名探偵フルド・エリカがあれだけ自信満々に強打するほどの一手じゃない。
Would Erika be happy after playing a defensive move? Though this move looks as though she's restraining herself, it's also extremely unlikely that Erika was playing defensively.
これはきっと守りじゃなくどういう攻撃か理解はできねえがな。
次は私たちの手番ですが、
とりあえず表向きは奴は第一の番の推理ではなくおさば引け引かば押せだ。ならこっちは攻めていくしか。
しかしゲストハウスはかなりの守りになっています。
そうだな。ゲストハウスの全域がしかしビショップやナイトのように敵陣に食い込むのを得意とする駒だっていろいろある。
Badler snapped his fingers, and a single gold butterfly appeared from the darkness, then flew in front of the chessboard, trailing gold sparks behind it. It landed without a sound, then transformed into a black piece representing the witch's darkness.
X レイ、これもチェス用語だったな。
はい。一見敵の支配下に見えるが、実際は自分の駒が十分に影響力を効かせている。
エリカ、生存者をすべて密閉し、それは甘い考えだ。
Badler raised his new black piece high. His target was a single open space deep behind enemy lines.
どう受ける？これが俺の。
I bet. Let's go.
これでようやくまずは屋敷に深夜の散歩と参りましょうか。殺人犯が潜んでいるかもしれない不気味な屋敷に酔狂な御人です。とんでもない。ようやく得た自由時間じゃない。今の私はプール授業の後の自由時間みたいにワクワクしています。
Now that Bernkastel was nowhere in sight, Erika was regaining her high spirits. She wasn't exaggerating when she said she was spreading her wings. Dalinar knew that she was risking her own destruction in this game, and she was not in a favorable position by any means. Dalinar could do nothing but assist Erika so that she could fight to the best of her abilities.
よし、ゲストハウス1階の戸締まりも完璧。玄関もちゃんとチェーンロックで封じられています。
Before leaving the guest house, Erika did a check at the first floor, making sure that nothing was out of place. Then she found a flashlight and umbrella in the servant room next to the entrance.
では参りましょう。まずは6人の死因くらいは確定しなくちゃ。
She unset the chain, unlocked the door, and opened it. The freezing outside air poured in.
風はだいぶあるようです。まあこの体の濡れようが冷えようがどう行きましょう。
When Erika dropped her gaze to open her umbrella, she noticed something lying at her feet.
これはいつもの手紙です。
It was one of those letters sent by the witch, with the seal of the one-winged eagle on it. It had been wedged under the outside mat in front of the entrance, as though someone had predicted that Erika would eventually leave for the mansion by this way. It was in the shadows of the large eaves, so it had avoided the rain entirely.
早速来ました。まるで待ち受けていたかのように。
She bent over and picked it up. She then tore it open recklessly and pulled the letter inside out of it. The message had been written in neat letters.
ようこそフルドエリ。やれやれ、私を名指し。完全に読まれてますね。内容は何です？犯行予告です。いや、事後報告という後ろ宮バトラの死体をお預かりしたそうです。どうぞ探してみてくださいとか言ってます。第二の晩の寄り添い師2人を引き裂け。まあ死体が消失するそれほど親身のある話ではありません。
Erika shrugged and scorned the letter. However, this letter was a real attack. All the survivors were sealed in rooms on the second floor. And at the very end, after she'd gone around with Kraus and the others to check the locks on doors and windows, Erika had personally confirmed that there was nothing at this spot. So this was an attack saying someone who shouldn't be here placed the letter, and that this someone was a witch. That was also an attack that the old Beto had often used. I mean, it's definitely bad. I mean, that's just the obvious answer, you know. Badler wasn't really dead, and he placed the letter there. And now that she's left, he's gonna go kill. How's he gonna do it? Who knows? Especially since those seals are there, but it's gonna happen.
見せ方も同じならトリックまで同じだって言うんじゃないで。ドラノール、バトラを呼び出してください。了解です。バトラ卿、当方の手番を所望です。
了解だ。受けて立つ。
申し訳。実は指し手の宣言ではありません。実は一つ謝らなければならないことがありまして。
Apologize. Battler and Beto's eyes went wide. However, though Erika said that she wanted to apologize, she had a confident look on her face, as though even that apology would be a new move. Yeah, no, the apology is gonna be like, I'm sorry, you're such a fucking stupid idiot. So Battler glared at her dubiously without letting his guard down.
例の遡実はすでに1箇所封印しておりました。
It was Battler's room, wasn't it?
それのご報告が遅くなりました。
It was Battler's room, wasn't it? And that's why he's stuck in there, right? And now he has to...
つまりお前はもうこれで3部屋。
はい、直ちに報告するお約束だったのですが、うっかり失念して、
because
こ
she
こまで
already
ゲームを
suspected it was
進めてし
Battler.
まいました。
After the previous game, of course she's gonna suspect it's Battler.
心よりお詫びいたします。
心より詫びてる顔には俺が許した権利だ。それでいつどこを
ドラノール、ご報告申し上げ、エリカ卿による死体検視時にバトラの客室を封印しておりましたことを
And he confirmed with the red that all the victims were in their respective rooms at that exact point in time when she was out in the hallway there. Meaning that it had already been sealed. At that point in time it had been sealed, but he said that Battler's body was still in that room. Like his whole point was, the whole point was like not to confirm whether they're alive or dead, just their location, alright? And he confirmed that his body was still in that room. As of just a few minutes ago, right? And yet, she's saying that retroactively, his room has been sealed hours ago. And that's why he's stuck in that room, right? That's why he's stuck in there. Because he doesn't know how he gets out of that. Because those seals fuck up his plan. Beto tried not to let it show on her face, but her eyebrows twitched visibly and her gaze flicked over to Battler.
本来なら5つの密室すべてにゲームマスターのあなたに敬意を表してバトラさんの
ご丁寧に俺の棺桶の蓋を
つい先ほど屋敷に到着しあなたの死体の客室を調べる。しかしこの手紙の登場で急ぎご報告した方がいいと思いました。
Which fucks over Battler, right? Because Battler was intended to be, the culprit. But if he's locked in the room, how did that thing get there? If he chooses to say himself he's the one who did it, how'd he get out of the room? Well, no, it's not even the matter of how the letter got there. The letter says that Battler's corpse has been moved.
どうしてそう思うのです？いいえ、何しろバトラさんは自分の死体のそれによってこの登場した手紙、話が変わってくる可能性もあるかなとそう思いまして。いとこ部屋と隣部屋を封印、事後報告で申し訳ないですが、そして島にはエリカ教を抜いて18人目の存在は過去のゲームですでに否定済みとなると、手紙を置ける人物とひょっとして話も変わってくるかなと。
Erika laughed crudely while staring into Battler's eyes to see if he was panicked or disturbed.
バトラさん、
エリカの報告が遅くなっただけの、何も焦ることなどない。
Erika had suspected it since the beginning. It was possible that Battler actually hadn't been killed and was still alive. And if he was still alive, then the letter that had suddenly appeared was easy to explain, even though all the survivors were sealed up. Judging by Beto's faint agitation, maybe Erika's guess had been right on the mark. Battler played dead and somehow got around to Erika's examination. And then, while everyone was barricading themselves in the guest house, he snuck out of the guest room. After that, he placed a letter detailing the disappearance of his own corpse in the entrance to the lobby, and hid himself. If that was the truth, then the seals that had been placed on Battler's guest room at the time of Erika's examination were now very significant. In other words, if this was the trick they'd used, then Battler would certainly have broken the seals when he left his guest room. The trick would not be workable without breaking the seals. Since the survivors were all sealed up inside the guest house, then if the seals on the guest room were broken, it meant acknowledging that at least one of the victims was actually alive. If Battler had known about the seals earlier, it was likely that he would have advanced the game in a different way to avoid this. In other words, it was very likely that an announcement about the seals would have had a large effect on the rest of Battler's game. Erika was saying if Battler avoided breaking the seals because he was pretending to be a corpse, and instead remained inside the guest room, perhaps this letter would not have appeared in the story. If Battler was actually alive and had placed the letter there, then now that Erika's seals had come into play, there was a chance that his trick would cause a contradiction somewhere down the line. That sort of contradiction is called a logic error.
ロジックエラー？今回の物語の随分最初の方で魔女側が犯してはならぬ最大最悪のミス、反則点。思い出、物語の表裏が合わぬこと、矛盾することとか言ってたわね。伏せたカップの中に飴玉が現れる魔法の。マリアお姉ちゃんとエリカが、あれはお姉ちゃんが目を閉じている間にカップの中に。そうだ、その手品の過程を観測していないマリア、魔法でカップの中に飴玉が現れたとする魔法幻想を受け。そうか、ロジックエラーとは不可能になってしまった手品という意味ね。
If you think about it, Erika and Maria's fierce red and blue truth battle over this magic was the real opening of this tale's fight. Let's try to remember that exchange. The heartless truth was that it had all been a trick. Making the candy appear in the cup by magic had been nothing more than Beto's claim. Magic can only do things that one could accomplish. In other words, you can only have a magical result if it's something that could have been done without magic. Let's be clear. There are two general types of magic. If you summon giants and make towers grow from the ground, but when the lid is taken off, nothing has happened in the rose garden, that's one type of magic. That's just an illusion. It's a lie with no observers that takes place where the witch says it did, in a location without any of the anti-magic toxin. Magic that doesn't have to match a result is the most simple kind. A lie. This is the same as a worthless delusion, an illusion, a daydream. Even Badler saw through it partway through the third game. Then there's another kind, which we might call true magic. Magic that matches a result. The cup trick is an example of magic that matches a result, since an observer actually checks to see that the cup's contents were empty before seeing a candy appear there, and thus an actual observer of the incident is created. I've discovered one big rule that magic matching a result has to follow, unlike the magic of illusions. The rule is that only the unobserved process of what you accomplish can be transformed into magic. I can speak even more generally and ruthlessly. In short, all forms of magic are tricks. Only things that can be accomplished without magic can have a matching result. Ironically, this also proves that magic doesn't actually exist. But, out of respect for the witch's game, let's call it making the game solvable and fair for the human player.
つまりカップの中の飴玉が今回はエリカの前に現れた謎の手紙。これは手品でなくて、それをお兄ちゃんは魔女が魔法で手紙をそこに置いたと主張することで結果を伴う。そうだ、生存者は全員ゲストハウスの密室に封じられている。突然に現れたこの手紙は魔女以外に置くことはしかしそれでもつまりは可能な手品でなくてはならないということだ。
In order to see through the trick with the candy in the cup, Erika had countered with the blue truth, saying that the candy had been snuck in there while her eyes were closed. That was the correct answer, so Maria hadn't had any red that she could use. But what if she had used it? For example, what if Maria had used the red truth then to say, until I lifted the cup, the closed room of the overturned cup remained intact?
赤き真実は真実にしか使えないんでしょ。嘘をシャーシャーと言えたら重大なルール違反だわ。そうだ、自分のトリックを否定する赤き真実は大きなルール。しかしその赤き真実に抵触しない別のトリック、いささかアンフェアではあるが、その赤き真実はこの場合はカップの中の密室は維持されていた。魔女側は即座に提出しなければならない。証拠を突きつけられて2点3点させる政治家の言い訳みたいだわ。そうだ、まあその程度の赤ならばまだ苦しい言い訳で、テーブルに仕掛けがあったとか二重底の手品用カップだったとか。しかしもしあらかじめその可能性に赤き真実が多ければ多いほど言い逃れの余地もなくなるわけだ。
In actuality, the candy had been put in the cup while Maria's eyes were closed. However, if, when Erika saw through that, Maria had used the red truth to say that the closed room of the cup had been preserved, the witch would have to rush and revise the scenario to a new trick that still worked logically after that new red. Revising the scenario is an unfair move that would never be allowed in the mystery genre. However, the very act of revising the scenario takes place inside the witch's head, which is an unobservable world. So, if she claimed that she'd been using the trick with the fake bottomed cup from the beginning, no one could deny it. So, even if it really was a trick done while Oni-chan's eyes were closed, as long as the witch leaves herself a way out, she can even switch between truths, tricks. Rather than calling this an action available to witches, we should probably say that it's only usable by the game master, the one who creates and writes. But even so, the new truth must not contradict any of the previously stated truths. If the red truth makes it so that the trick no longer makes logical sense, then there will be a mismatch between the two sides of the story, the illusory result that the game master claims is magic, and the true result that was brought about by a trick. So when we get a contradiction and it no longer makes logical sense, we call it a logic error. And that would mean the destruction of the witch's game.